Sheriff Dara stood at the edge of the Badlands, her reptilian eyes narrowed against the harsh glare of Mirax's twin suns. The air shimmered with heat, making the distant mountains waver like a mirage. Her scales, normally a cool blue-green, had begun to take on a faint reddish hue, the first sign of the coming hot season. "Anything on the scanner?" she asked, turning to her deputy. Deputy Juan shook his head, the motion causing his neck frills to flutter. "Nothing yet, Sheriff, but the crash site should be just beyond that ridge." Dara flicked her tongue, tasting the air. Her senses were already becoming sharper as her biology prepared for hot season, a time when her people's territorial instincts and biological urges intensified. It was poor timing for an alien ship to crash in her jurisdiction. "Let's move," she ordered, adjusting the regulation blaster on her hip. They crested the ridge and spotted the crash site immediately. A long gouge in the red soil led to a sleek vessel, unlike any Dara had seen before. Its design was elegant yet practical, with strange symbols etched along its hull. "Federation markings," Juan murmured, "but not from any species I recognize." Movement caught Dara's eye. A figure was removing components from the ship's exposed engine compartment. "Thief," she hissed, her pupils contracting to slits. The hot season's territorial instinct flared within her. "Circle around. I'll approach from the front." Dara moved silently across the rocky terrain, her boots barely disturbing the loose stones. Years of enforcing law in the unforgiving Badlands had taught her how to move without being detected. As she drew closer, she studied the intruder. He stood taller than any Naraxian, with no scales, frills, or tail. His skin was a soft pinkish-brown color, and dark hair covered the top of his head. He wore a tight-fitting suit with more of those unfamiliar markings. The stranger sensed her presence and spun around. His eyes widened, round eyes with white surrounds, so different from her own vertical pupils. "Stop what you're doing," Dara commanded, drawing her blaster. "You're trespassing on Naraxian territory and stealing resources." The alien raised his hand slowly. "I'm not stealing," he replied in surprisingly good galactic standard. "This is my ship. I'm trying to repair it." Dara's tongue flicked out again, tasting his scent on the air. "Unfamiliar, but not unpleasant. Identify yourself and your species." "My name is June. I'm human, from Earth." He gestured toward the ship. "I was on an exploration mission when my navigation system failed. The crash landing damaged my communications array." Human. Dara had never encountered this species before. There are no registered human vessels authorized in this sector. "We're relatively new to deep space," June explained. "I'm one of the first long-range explorers. My mission is to make peaceful contact with other civilizations." Deputy Juan appeared from behind the ship, his blaster also drawn. "Sheriff, I found these in his vessel." He held up several containers of Naraxian mineral samples. Dara's eyes narrowed. "Stealing our resources after all." "Those are just scientific samples," June protested. "For analysis, not theft. I'm a researcher, not a criminal." The hot season's influence made Dara's temper flare. "You'll have plenty of time to explain yourself at the detention center. Turn around and place your hands behind your back." As she approached with restraints, June suddenly moved, faster than she expected. He ducked under her arm and sprinted toward his ship. "Stop," Dara called, giving chase. The human was quick, but Dara was quicker. She launched herself forward, using her powerful legs to close the distance. Her tail whipped out for balance as she tackled him to the ground. What surprised her was his strength. As they grappled in the red dust, the human matched her force with his own. Most species were no physical match for Naraxians, especially female officers during the onset of hot season when their strength increased. "I'm not your enemy," Jim grunted as he tried to break free from her grip. "If you'd just listen." "Save it for your statement," Dara replied, finally managing to secure the restraints around his wrists. With Juan's help, they got the human to his feet. Dust covered his strange, smooth skin, and a small cut on his face leaked red blood. Another biological difference that fascinated Dara despite herself. Your ship and possessions are now impounded pending investigation, she informed him formally. You have the right to legal representation under the Galactic Accord, assuming your species has signed it. We haven't, Jones said grimly. Like I said, we're new to space travel. Dara felt a twinge of unease. Unregistered species had fewer protections under Noraxian law. Then you'll be appointed a representative familiar with our legal system. As they led him to their transport vehicle, the human kept looking back at his ship with obvious concern. My research, he said. The data I've collected, it's important. It will all be cataloged as evidence, Dara assured him, more gently than she intended. Inside the transport, Dara studied the human while Juan piloted them back toward the settlement. June sat quietly, his expression calm despite his situation. She noticed small details, the rise and fall of his chest as he breathed, the way his eyes constantly assessed his surroundings, the unusual five-fingered hands. Your timing is unfortunate, she told him. Our hot season begins soon. Most off-worlders avoid Noraxis during this time. June's eyes met hers. What happens during hot season? Dara felt an unexpected flush creep up her neck. Our biology changes. We become more intense, territorial. It's not an ideal time for diplomatic incidents. To her surprise, the human nodded with understanding rather than fear. Many Earth species have similar seasonal cycles, biological imperatives that temporarily alter behavior. His calm acceptance caught Dara off guard. Most aliens found Noraxian hot season disturbing or frightening. As they approached the settlement, with its domed buildings shimmering in the heat, Dara found herself curious about this human. There was something different about him, a resilience and adaptability she hadn't encountered before. Welcome to Solus Settlement, human, she said as the transport slowed. For now, it's your new home. The detention center's processing room hummed with activity as Dara completed the human's intake forms. June sat quietly on the other side of her desk, his restraints now removed, but his expression guarded. The strange smoothness of his skin still fascinated her. Species, human. Origin, Earth, Dara muttered as she typed. Purpose of visit to Noraxis. Scientific exploration, June offered. Not invasion or theft. Dara's tongue flicked out briefly, a Noraxian gesture of skepticism. So you claim. Yet we found you with samples of our minerals. Research samples, he insisted. Earth is seeking to understand other worlds. We're peaceful explorers. Deputy Juan entered the room, carrying a tray with 3 containers of water. He set one before June. The testing of his possessions is complete, Sheriff. And, Dara asked, looking up from her screen, his equipment appears to be scientific in nature. The mineral samples are indeed small, not commercial quantities. Dara noticed June hadn't touched his water. Is our water unsuitable for humans? June eyed the cloudy blue liquid. I'm not sure if it's compatible with my biology. Ah. Dara felt a flash of embarrassment. Our water contains mineral supplements beneficial to Noraxians. I'll get you something purified. When she returned with clear water, June accepted it gratefully. As he drank, Dara noticed his 5-fingered hands again, so different from her own 4-digited hands with their subtle scaling. Your species is unknown to our databases, she said. This complicates matters. Earth only developed faster than light travel 15 years ago, June explained. We've been cautious about expanding too quickly. Wise, Dara commented. Many young species rush outward and find the galaxy less welcoming than they hoped. A sudden heat flushed through her body, causing her scales to ripple with a reddish tint. She gripped the edge of her desk, breathing deeply until the sensation passed. June watched her with concern. Are you all right? Hot season approaches, she said stiffly. It affects our biology. Like a mating season? He asked innocently. Dara's scales flared bright red in embarrassment. That's part of it. But it's also about territorial defense, heightened emotions, and physical changes. Most off-worlders find it disturbing. To her surprise, Jun nodded with understanding. On Earth, many animals have similar cycles. Some humans even experience seasonal mood changes. This is more intense, Dara said. For the next 30 days, Neuraxians become more primal. Her comm unit buzzed, and Dara answered with relief at the interruption. After a brief conversation, she stood. You'll be moved to a visitor holding cell. It's more comfortable than standard detention, given your diplomatic status. As they walked through the facility, other Neuraxians stopped to stare at the human. June met their curious gazes without fear, which impressed Dara. Most aliens cowered when confronted with a detention center full of increasingly season-affected Neuraxians. Our bodies regulate temperature differently than most species, Dara explained, as they entered a corridor that felt noticeably warmer. Hot season brings higher temperature requirements. Like reptiles on Earth, June observed. They need external heat sources. Dara bristled slightly. We are not primitive. Our biology is highly adapted to this planet's conditions. I didn't mean to offend, June said quickly. On Earth, reptiles are respected for their efficiency and survival skills. They reached the visitor cell, a simple room with basic amenities, including a sleeping platform, sanitation unit, and viewing screen. The environmental controls can be adjusted, Dara explained, showing him the panel. Set them for your comfort. As June explored the cell, Dara watched him curiously. What is Earth like? Diverse, he answered. Oceans, mountains, deserts, forests. Our people are just as varied. All without scales. Dara asked, unable to hide her curiosity. June smiled. Yes, though we come in many colors. Our differences are more subtle than yours. The facility's alarm suddenly blared, making both of them jump. The lights flickered, then went out completely. Emergency lighting cast the room in a dim blue glow. Dara's comm unit remained silent. Something's wrong with our systems, she said, moving toward the door. The door's panel flashed red, then dead. They were locked in. Your environmental controls are failing, June observed, pointing to the temperature display that was rapidly rising. Is that dangerous for you? No, but it might be for you, Dara replied, concerned. Neuraxian comfort temperatures could be harmful to humans. She tried her comm unit again without success. Through the door's small window, she could see other officers rushing about in the corridor. Let me look at that panel, June offered, moving toward the environmental controls. Dara hesitated. That would be interfering with detention center equipment, which is currently malfunctioning, he pointed out. I have engineering training. Another wave of heat rippled through Dara's body, stronger this time. Her scales flushed deeper red, and she felt her patience wearing thin, another hot season symptom. Fine, she snapped, more harshly than intended. Just don't make it worse. June opened the panel without responding to her tone. His fingers moved deftly among the unfamiliar technology. Your system architecture is different from ours, but the principles are similar, he murmured. Dara watched him work, noticing how his face took on a focused intensity. After several minutes, the panel beeped and the emergency lights stopped flashing. I bypassed the main control node, June explained. It looks like your system was trying to accommodate hot season temperature preferences for all cells simultaneously. It overloaded. The door panel turned green, unlocking. Dara stared at him in surprise. You fixed it. Just this section, June said. The problem is in your central control system. Deputy Juan appeared at the door, his scales flushed with stress. Sheriff, the environmental system crashed. Maintenance says it will take hours to fix. This human might be able to help, Dara said, gesturing to June. He fixed our section. Juan looked doubtful. An alien touching our central systems. During hot season. The chief will never approve. Dara felt another wave of heat, along with a growing irritation. Hot season was affecting her judgment, making her more impulsive, But she also recognized an opportunity. The detention center houses 17 different species, she reminded Juan. Some can't survive our hot season temperatures. We need those systems working. After a moment of consideration, she made her decision. June, she said formally, if you help us repair our systems, I'll consider it a gesture of goodwill from your species. The human's eyes met hers, and something passed between them. An understanding beyond words. I'll help, he said simply. As they hurried toward the central control room, Dara felt a strange mix of emotions. Professional concern for the facility, the biological effects of hot season, and a growing curiosity about this unusual alien who faced each challenge with calm intelligence. What she didn't yet realize was that this simple technical problem would be the first of many challenges they would face together. The central control room of the detention center buzzed with nervous energy as technicians worked frantically to restore the malfunctioning systems. June stood before the main terminal, his fingers moving swiftly across the unfamiliar interface while Dara watched nearby. Her scales had taken on a deeper red hue, a sign of her growing seasonal stress. Your system architecture is unusual, but I think I understand it now, June said, not looking up from his work. Someone inserted a code sequence that triggered the environmental failure. This wasn't an accident. Dara moved closer, her tail swishing with agitation. Sabotage. Who would do such a thing? Before June could answer, a loud explosion rocked the building. The lights flickered once more before stabilizing. What was that? June asked, looking up from the console. Dara's comm unit crackled to life. Deputy Juan's voice came through, strained and urgent. Sheriff, we're under attack. Armed intruders at the east entrance. How many? Dara demanded, already moving toward the door. At least 6 that we can see. They're using sonic disruptors and... His voice cut off abruptly. Dara turned to the technicians. Lockdown procedures. Now. She glanced at June, uncertainty flashing across her features. With hot season affecting her judgment and most of her deputies already gone for the seasonal break, she faced a difficult decision. Put him back in his cell, she ordered one of the technicians, gesturing toward June. Sheriff, June said calmly, I can help. I have combat training. You're a scientist, Dara replied skeptically. Earth exploration teams are trained for multiple situations. We never know what we might encounter. Another explosion shook the building, closer this time. The remaining technician looked at Dara with panic in his eyes. Sheriff, we're understaffed because of hot season. Most of our security team is on leave. Dara felt the heat of season change pulsing through her body, making her thoughts race and her instincts sharpen. In normal circumstances, she would never trust a prisoner she had just met, especially not an alien from an unknown species. But these were not normal circumstances. If this is a trick, she warned, her voice dropping to a threatening hiss. It's not, June assured her. My people value cooperation. And right now, both our survival depends on working together. After a moment's hesitation, Dara made her decision. She removed a small key from her belt and unlocked a weapons cabinet on the wall. From it, she took a standard-issue stun baton and held it out to June. This is non-lethal but effective, she explained. One touch will incapacitate most species. June accepted the weapon, testing its weight in his hand. Thank you for trusting me. I don't trust you, Dara corrected him, drawing her own blaster. But I need every able body right now. They moved through the corridors together, the sound of fighting growing louder. The detention center's layout was simple, a central hub with radiating corridors leading to different sections. The attackers had breached from the east, where the facility's security was thinnest. What do they want? June asked as they took cover at a junction. Could be anything, Dara replied. We house some valuable technology and information. During hot season, many opportunists strike, knowing we're vulnerable. They turned a corner and immediately faced 2 attackers. Tall, lean beings with elaborate breathing apparatuses covering their faces. Dust runners, Dara whispered. Desert bandits. They usually avoid settlements. The attackers spotted them and raised their weapons. Dara moved with the enhanced speed of hot season, firing her blaster with precision. One attacker went down, but the other fired back, forcing them to take cover. To Dara's surprise, Jun rolled from their hiding spot and moved with unexpected agility. He dodged a blast from the attacker and closed the distance quickly. The stun baton made contact, and the dust runner collapsed instantly. "You move well for a scientist," Dara observed as they continued forward. "Earth has higher gravity than most inhabited planets," Jun explained. "It gives us certain advantages." They reached the main detention area, where they found Deputy Juan and 2 guards trying to hold off 3 more attackers. The deputies were pinned down behind an overturned table, while the intruders systematically worked to open the secure cells. "They're trying to release the prisoners," Dara realized, "or looking for someone specific." She and Jun split up, using the chaos to their advantage. Dara moved to assist her deputies, while Jun circled around to flank the attackers. The plan worked perfectly until a 4th attacker, previously unseen, emerged from a side corridor and knocked Jun to the ground. The human recovered quickly, but now faced 2 opponents. Dara felt a surge of hot season protectiveness, an instinct that surprised her with its intensity. Without thinking, she changed targets and fired at the attackers threatening Jun. Her precise shot struck one in the shoulder, sending him sprawling. The fight intensified. Dara found herself back-to-back with Jun, defending against the increasingly desperate attackers. The human matched her movements as if they had trained together for years. "Behind you," Jun called out, and Dara ducked just as a blast passed over her head. The final attacker fled down the corridor, with Deputy Juan in pursuit. "Are you injured?" Dara asked, turning to check on Jun. Her concern was more than professional, and she knew the hot season was affecting her emotions. "I'm fine," he assured her, though a cut above his eye leaked red blood. "Are these common occurrences on Neuraxis?" "Not like this," Dara said, holstering her weapon. "Something isn't right." Juan returned, dragging an unconscious attacker. "We caught this one trying to access the evidence lockup." Dara's suspicions grew. The evidence lockup. What were they after? "Perhaps this," Jun suggested, kneeling beside the fallen attacker and removing a small device from their pocket. "It's a data scanner." They were looking for information. A wave of heat surged through Dara's body, stronger than before. Her vision blurred momentarily, and she steadied herself against the wall. The hot season was progressing faster than usual, intensified by the combat and stress. Jun noticed her distress. To her surprise, he approached without fear, despite her obvious biological state. Most aliens would keep their distance from a Neuraxian showing signs of deep season change. "You need to rest," he said quietly. "Your body is under strain." "I'm fine," she insisted, straightening with effort. "We need to secure the facility and check for other intruders." As they worked to restore order, Dara couldn't help but observe Jun with newfound respect. He moved among the injured, offering assistance regardless of species. His calm demeanor had a settling effect on the panicked detainees. Later, when the facility was secure and the attackers locked in cells, Dara found Jun examining his ship's components in the evidence room. "You fought well," she acknowledged. "Most civilians would have panicked." "I told you, Earth explorers are prepared for many situations." He looked up from the ship part he was examining. These components were what they were after. "Look at this." Dara leaned closer, noticing the subtle signs of tampering. "Someone sabotaged your ship before it crashed, and then attacked when they realized I survived," Jun concluded. "The question is, why?" Their eyes met, and Dara felt another wave of heat, but this one was different, more focused. In that moment, she made another decision. "I think it's time we reconsider your status here," she said. "You're no longer a detainee. Consider yourself consultant." Jun smiled, a gesture Dara was beginning to find strangely appealing. Does that mean I get my own quarters? Don't push your luck, human, she replied, but there was no hostility in her voice, only the beginning of something that neither of them could yet define. The twin sons of Neuraxis beat down mercilessly as Dara and Jun prepared for their journey into the Badlands. 3 days had passed since the attack on the detention center, and the investigation had revealed troubling information. The captured Dust Runners had confessed that they were hired to retrieve specific components from Jun's ship, technology that could potentially open a stable wormhole. The hover transport is stocked with 5 days of supplies, Deputy Juan reported, handing Dara the vehicle's control key. His eyes darted nervously to Jun, who was checking a map of the region. Are you certain about this, Sheriff? Traveling with an off-worlder during hot season is unprecedented. Dara's scales shimmered with a deep crimson hue, a visual testament to her progressing season. The alternative is letting criminals acquire technology that could destabilize our entire sector. Juan lowered his voice. It's not just about the mission. Your condition is advancing quickly. Being confined in a small transport with any non-Neuraxian could be dangerous. I can control myself, Dara snapped, more harshly than intended. She took a steadying breath. The human has proven himself trustworthy. Once Juan departed, Dara approached Jun, who was loading the last of their equipment. The human had adapted quickly to Neuraxis' higher temperatures, though he still required more water than a Neuraxian would. The thieves' hideout is located here, she explained, pointing to a remote canyon on the digital map. It's a journey of 2 days through the worst of the Badlands. Jun studied the terrain. Rough country. Does your hot season affect your ability to travel? Dara hesitated before answering. Physically, it enhances my capabilities. More strength, better reflexes, sharper senses. But emotionally, she searched for the right words. We become more primitive, more driven by instinct than reason. I understand, Jones said simply, and somehow Dara believed that he did. They departed as the first sun reached its zenith. The hover transport skimmed across the red sands, its environmental shields protecting them from the worst of the heat. Inside the vehicle, Dara set the temperature higher than would be comfortable for most species, but Jun made no complaint. Your adaptation to our climate is impressive, she observed as they crossed a vast salt flat. Humans evolved on a world with widely varying climates, Jun explained. We can acclimate to many environments, given time. The conversation flowed more easily than Dara expected. Jun spoke of Earth, a world of oceans and forests that sounded impossibly lush to a Neuraxian. In return, she found herself sharing stories of her planet's history and customs. So the hot season was once a time for clan gatherings? Jun asked, genuinely interested. Yes, before we developed our modern society. Families would come together in protected caves, sharing resources and forming new bonds. Dara's voice softened with unexpected nostalgia. Many still observed the old ways in rural areas. As the day progressed, the terrain grew more challenging. Massive rock formations jutted from the sand like the bones of ancient beasts. The transport's navigation system frequently warned of unstable ground ahead. We should stop soon, Dara decided as the second sun began to set. Night travel in the Badlands is treacherous. They found shelter in a shallow cave overlooking a dry river. After securing the transport, they established a small camp. The cave's natural insulation kept the worst of the day's heat at bay. As darkness fell, Dara felt another wave of seasonal intensity wash over her. Her scales rippled with heat, and her senses heightened uncomfortably. Every sound, every sense seemed magnified. You should rest, Jun suggested, noticing her discomfort. I can take first watch. No, Dara said firmly. I don't sleep much during hot season anyway. Jun didn't argue. Instead, he busied himself organizing their supplies. After a while, he asked, "What's it like?" "The hot season, I mean." Dara considered deflecting the question, but something about the human's directness invited honesty. Imagine every emotion intensified. every sense sharpened until it's almost painful, your body feeling like it belongs to someone else, someone more primitive, more driven by instinct. Is it all negative? June asked quietly. The question caught her off guard. No, she admitted. There's clarity too. A connection to our ancestors. Some experiences become more vivid. Their eyes met across the small campfire, and Dara felt something shift between them. A recognition of shared understanding despite their biological differences. The moment was broken by a distant sound, the distinctive whine of hover engines. Someone's out there, June whispered, immediately alert. Dara extinguished their fire with a handful of sand. The dust runners. They must have tracked us. They'd moved to the cave entrance. In the valley below, the lights of several vehicles cut through the darkness, methodically searching the area. They're between us and our destination, Dara observed grimly. And between us and the settlement, June added. We're cut off. Dara felt hot season aggression surge through her body, the primal urge to defend territory. With effort, she channeled it into tactical thinking. There's another route, she decided. Through the crystal flats. It's dangerous. The ground is unstable, and the crystal formations can disrupt navigation systems, but they won't expect us to go that way. You know the terrain well, June noted. I grew up in these badlands. Before I became sheriff, I was a guide. A memory surfaced, bringing an unexpected smile to her face. My first hot season alone, I tracked a rare desert blossom across the crystal flats. 3 days without rest, driven by seasonal focus. June smiled in return. That focus might save us now. They spent the night watching the distant lights, taking turns to rest, though Dara found sleep elusive. The hot season made her too aware of the human's presence, his different scent, the sound of his breathing, the heat his body generated. At first light, they loaded the transport and set off toward the crystal flats, a region where massive translucent crystal formations erupted from the sand like frozen waves. The transport's sensors struggled to maintain stability as they navigated between the towering structures. They're beautiful, June remarked, gazing up at crystals that shimmered with internal light. What causes them? Mineral-rich groundwater, superheated by thermal vents, Dara explained, appreciating his curiosity even in their dangerous situation. They grow during the wet season, about half a year from now. As they traveled deeper into the crystal maze, Dara felt increasingly at ease despite the danger and her advanced seasonal state. The human's calm presence was unexpectedly stabilizing, his questions and observations drawing her out of the internal intensity of hot season. By midday, they had crossed the most treacherous part of the flats. According to their map, the thieves' hideout was now less than half a day's journey ahead. We'll reach them by nightfall, Dara said, her voice carrying the focused edge of a predator closing in on prey. June studied her with concern. And then, Dara replied, feeling the full power of hot season coursing through her body, we show them why it's a mistake to steal from a human under an Araxian sheriff's protection. She didn't examine too closely why that particular phrasing felt so right. The hideout of the dust runners loomed ahead, a jagged structure built into the side of a massive red rock formation. Dara and June observed it from behind a cluster of wind-carved stones, the last light of the setting suns casting long shadows across the barren landscape. 6 guards visible, Dara whispered, her scales now a deep, pulsing crimson in her advanced hot season state. 4 at the entrance, 2 patrolling the perimeter. June nodded, studying the compound through a pair of distance viewers. I count at least 3 vehicles, probably more inside that hangar area. We need a distraction, Dara decided, her voice carrying the focused intensity of a predator preparing to strike. Hot season had sharpened her senses to painful clarity. She could smell the guard's scent on the breeze, hear the faint hum of the hideout's power generators. I have an idea, June said. He reached into their pack and removed a small device he had assembled from parts of his damaged ship. This can overload their power systems temporarily. It won't last long, but it should create enough confusion. Dara looked at the human with newfound respect. Throughout their journey, he had continually surprised her with his resourcefulness and calm under pressure. "Once we're inside, we locate your ship's components and leave," she instructed. "No unnecessary confrontation." June's eyes met hers. "Understood." As darkness settled over the Badlands, they moved into position. June placed his device near the hideout's external power coupling, then rejoined Dara behind a large boulder. 3 minutes, he whispered. They waited in silence, the hot night air thick between them. Dara fought to control her seasonal impulses, the urge to attack directly, to assert dominance, to protect what she now considered hers. That last thought startled her. When had she begun to think of the human and his technology as something personal to defend? The hideout suddenly plunged into darkness. Shouts of confusion echoed across the compound as emergency lighting flickered weakly. "Now," Dara hissed, and they moved forward as one. They slipped past the disoriented guards and entered through a side entrance. Inside, they navigated dimly lit corridors, avoiding the frantic dust runners trying to restore power. Dara led the way, her night vision superior to June's in the darkness. "The storage area should be ahead," she whispered, guiding him with a light touch on his arm. The contact sent an unexpected ripple of sensation through her seasonal heightened nervous system. The storage room was vast, filled with stolen goods from a dozen worlds. June moved methodically among the shelves, searching for his technology. "Here," he called softly, holding up a cylindrical device with intricate circuitry. "The wormhole stabilizer. And these component boards are from my navigation system." As he gathered the parts, Dara heard footsteps approaching. "Someone's coming," she warned. 3 dust runners appeared at the entrance, weapons raised. The leader, a tall, scared individual, smiled coldly. "The sheriff and the alien," he sneered. "How convenient. We've been tracking your transport since you entered the Crystal Flats." Dara felt hot season rage flood her system, her pupils narrowing to vertical slits. "Return what you've stolen, and we might let you live." The leader laughed. "Your hot season makes you overconfident, Sheriff. You're outnumbered in our territory." "Technically," June interjected with surprising calm, "we're all trespassing on Neuraxian government land. And you really shouldn't antagonize someone in her condition." The dust runners hesitated, suddenly uncertain as they noticed Dara's deep crimson scales and the predatory stance she had assumed. The fight erupted with explosive speed. Dara moved with hot season-enhanced reflexes, disarming the first attacker before he could fire. June proved surprisingly effective, using the confined space to his advantage as he had during the detention center attack. They had almost gained the upper hand when the leader produced a sonic disruptor, a weapon designed specifically to incapacitate Neuraxians by interfering with their sensitive hearing. The blast caught Dara directly, sending her crashing into a shelf of containers. Through a haze of pain, she saw the leader turn the weapon toward June. The human dove for cover, but not quickly enough. A second blast caught him in the side, throwing him against the wall. Something primal broke loose inside Dara, a hot season protective fury, unlike anything she had experienced before. She lunged forward despite the disorienting effects of the sonic weapon, her tail whipping out to knock the device from the leader's hand. The remaining dust runners fled as Dara stood over their fallen leader, her claws extended and a threatening hiss escaping her throat. It took all her willpower not to strike a killing blow. "Dara," June's voice cut through her rage. He had struggled to his feet, clutching his side. "We have what we came for." June nodded, studying the compound through a pair of distance viewers. "I count at least 3 vehicles, probably more inside that hangar area." "We need a distraction," Dara decided, her voice carrying the focused intensity of a predator preparing to strike. Hot season had sharpened her senses to painful clarity. She could smell the guard's scent on the breeze, hear the faint hum of the hideout's power generators. "I have an idea," Jum said. He reached into their pack and removed a small device he had assembled from parts of his damaged ship. This can overload their power systems temporarily. It won't last long, but it should create enough confusion. Dara looked at the human with newfound respect. Throughout their journey, he had continually surprised her with his resourcefulness and calm under pressure. "Once we're inside, we locate your ship's components and leave," she instructed. "No unnecessary confrontation." June's eyes met hers. "Understood." As darkness settled over the Badlands, they moved into position. June placed his device near the hideout's external power coupling, then rejoined Dara behind a large boulder. 3 minutes, he whispered. They waited in silence, the hot night air thick between them. Dara fought to control her seasonal impulses, the urge to attack directly, to assert dominance, to protect what she now considered hers. That last thought startled her. When had she begun to think of the human and his technology as something personal to defend? The hideout suddenly plunged into darkness. Shouts of confusion echoed across the compound as emergency lighting flickered weakly. "Now," Dara hissed, and they moved forward as one. They slipped past the disoriented guards and entered through a side entrance. Inside, they navigated dimly lit corridors, avoiding the frantic dust runners trying to restore power. Dara led the way, her night vision superior to June's in the darkness. "The storage area should be ahead," she whispered, guiding him with a light touch on his arm. The contact sent an unexpected ripple of sensation through her seasonal heightened nervous system. The storage room was vast, filled with stolen goods from a dozen worlds. June moved methodically among the shelves, searching for his technology. "Here," he called softly, holding up a cylindrical device with intricate circuitry. "The wormhole stabilizer. And these component boards are for my navigation system." As he gathered the parts, Dara heard footsteps approaching. "Someone's coming," she warned. 3 dust runners appeared at the entrance, weapons raised. The leader, a tall, scared individual, smiled coldly. "The sheriff and the alien," he sneered. "How convenient. We've been tracking your transport since you entered the Crystal Flats." Dara felt hot season rage flood her system, her pupils narrowing to vertical slits. "Return what you've stolen, and we might let you live." The leader laughed. "Your hot season makes you overconfident, Sheriff. You're outnumbered in our territory." "Technically," June interjected with surprising calm. "We're all trespassing on Neuraxian government land. And you really shouldn't antagonize someone in her condition." The dust runners hesitated, suddenly uncertain as they noticed Dara's deep crimson scales and the predatory stance she had assumed. The fight erupted with explosive speed. Dara moved with hot season-enhanced reflexes, disarming the first attacker before he could fire. June proved surprisingly effective, using the confined space to his advantage, as he had during the detention center attack. They had almost gained the upper hand when the leader produced a sonic disruptor, a weapon designed specifically to incapacitate Neuraxians by interfering with their sensitive hearing. The blast caught Dara directly, sending her crashing into a shelf of containers. Through a haze of pain, she saw the leader turn the weapon toward June. The human dove for cover, but not quickly enough. A second blast caught him in the side, throwing him against the wall. Something primal broke loose inside Dara, a hot season protective fury, unlike anything she had experienced before. She lunged forward despite the disorienting effects of the sonic weapon, her tail whipping out to knock the device from the leader's hand. The remaining dust runners fled as Dara stood over their fallen leader, her claws extended and a threatening hiss escaping her throat. It took all her willpower not to strike a killing blow. "Dara," June's voice cut through her rage. He had struggled to his feet, clutching his side. "We have what we came for."